Hello everyone, and welcome to this special episode of Let's Play Dragon Age Origins. I'm your host, Lisanne Faye. And before I dive into what's going to make this episode oh so special, I have a big announcement for my channel, and that is I'm going to start a brand new Let's Play, completely blind. I'm going to play, wait for it, Dark Souls. Yes, so Dark Souls will soon be coming to the channel, and I'm looking to start that on Halloween. So look forward to that. As I mentioned, it is going to be completely blind. I will maintain a bit of a buffer on it, so any comments I receive, it may take a week or two for me to implement those comments, rather than it appearing right in the next episode. And I just wanted to let you all know that. But I'm looking forward to doing it, and I hope you all will also join me for that Let's Play. So, in the meantime, let's go ahead and dive into what's going to make this episode oh so special, and that is talking about the history of the dwarves. So, let us start with the castes. Visitors to Orzammar should keep in mind that the hierarchies of Dwarven society are much more complex than our own. It is easy to gravely insult a man by simply mistaking his position. Since this can lead to unnecessary loss of life and limbs, I will attempt to mitigate the danger for my fellow travelers. The society of dwarves is divided into nobles, warriors, smiths, artisans, miners, merchants, and servants. Now you are undoubtedly saying to yourself, we have all those divisions among our own people. This is a dangerous misconception. Certainly we do have nobility, artisans, merchants, and these positions are largely inherited from our parents. However, the younger children of noblemen often choose to become artisans or soldiers. The sons of merchants may join the army or become servants or apprentice themselves to a craftsman. This is all freely chosen. Limited, perhaps, by circumstances of birth, but still chosen. What is a matter of choice for most human folk is dictated entirely by birth for dwarves. No one may become a smith who has not been born to the smith caste parents. A servant who marries a noble woman will never be a noble himself, and although his daughters would be nobles, his sons would be servants, for daughters inherit the caste of their mother, while sons inherit the caste of their father. So, things to know about Dwarven society. And the deep roads, where we just came from. There isn't a dwarf alive who remembers the deep roads as they once were. They were a network of tunnels that joined the tides together. To be honest, it isn't even right to give them such a simple term as tunnels. They are works of art with centuries of planning demonstrated in the geometry of their walls, with the statues of paragons that watch over travelers, with the flow of lava that keeps the deep roads lit and warm. The cloud gazers up on the surface talk of the imperial highway built by the magisters of old, a raised walkway that crossed thousands of miles, something that could have only been built by magic. Perhaps it is comparable to the deep roads, although we dwarves didn't need magic. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. The Darkspawn rule the deep roads now. When Orzammar sealed off the entrances to the deep roads, abandoning everything that lay out there, we handed over the kingdom that was to those black bastards forever. To think that there are genlocks crawling over Bunamar now, tearing down our statues and defiling our greatest works. Corruption covers everything we built out there. Every dwarf goes out and comes back, says it gets worse with each passing year. The foulness spread a little further. And the cloud gazers think the Darkspawn are gone just because they aren't spilling out onto the surface? Huh. One day, when Orzammar is gone for good, they will find out differently. Those Darkspawn won't have anywhere else to go but up, and they'll do it. The surface folk will have themselves a blight that will never end. Transcript of a conversation with a member of the Dwarven mining caste, 890 Blessed. Okay, and the city of Orzammar, which we've briefly looked at. The dwarves are lauded for their craftsmanship, and the city of Orzammar is one of their finest works. Orzammar lies at the heart of the Frostback Mountains, deep underground. The city arcs outward from the royal palace, which is built around a natural lava vent, continually fountaining liquid rock, which both lights and heats the entire cavern. The topmost tier of Orzammar is home to the noble caste, with their places fanning out in both directions from the court of the king as well as the Shaperate, which serves as a repository for all Dwarven knowledge. The lower tier is the Commons, where merchant caste holds sway and where the finest works of Orzammar's craftsmen are for sale. In the center of the River of Lava, connected to the Commons by a causeway, are the Proving Grounds, a sacred arena where the dwarves, by ancient tradition, settled their disputes. On one side of the fiery river are ruins of old dwarven palaces fallen into disrepair, which the locals called Dust Town, now home to the city's castless. On the other side of the river are the deep roads, which once joined the sprawling dwarven empire together, but now, after centuries of darkspawn incursions, are largely sealed off. Nearly all knowledge of this network of underground passages has been lost, even to its builders. From the Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. Who we know. Cut to Kal Shirak. 1155 of the Deventer Imperium will be known as a year of painful decisions, but we cannot waver. The threat we face is the greatest we have known. If we are overrun, all trace of the ancestors' glory will be undone. Orzammar must stand, and it must stand alone. Hormok, Kal Shirak, Gundar, we have lost contact, and we must assume they are lost to the Horde. We must seal the weakest link in our defense, the deep roads that lead to our fallen brethren. I have ordered our finest demolitionists to place the charges. I ask that each of you think of those we have lost. They served as a warning that spurred us to action, and I know the stone will embrace them. They are the foundation of our survival, and they will not be forgotten. From a proclamation by High King Threestone. 200 years, Kal Shirak lives, you stone-forsaken deep lords. There is no greater hatred than a brother at your throat. Graffiti. Author unknown. Legion of the Dead. So that is who Cardall leads, is the Legion of the Dead. Yes, Stone's greetings, friend. You will find ceaselessly in the Legion of the Dead. Motto of the Legion. The Legion accepts all, so I was told by one of the Legionnaires himself, a dwarf who waited quietly at the entrance to the deep roads for the rest of his unit to assemble. They gathered slowly, each equipped with heavy armor and fine weapons, each painted with grim tattoos applied at their funerals the night previous. For that is the nature of the Legion. They are all dead. Any dwarf may join the Legion so long as he is willing to give up everything he has. The funeral rites are somber. A final goodbye is said to family and loved ones. Any material goods are dispersed to heirs, and last words are said, and then it is done. The new Legionnaire marches out into the deep roads, never to return. The Legion fights against the Darkspawns to the last, striking one final blow against the monsters that have claimed so much of their homeland. Many join the Legion to clear the slate. Criminals join to avoid punishment. The dishonored join so their houses and families need not suffer on their behalf. The bankrupted join so their debts may be forgiven. A few join for a last chance at glory, but the Legion takes them too. This group hopes to reach the fabled fortress of Bunamar, once the Legion's home, associated with the greatest of their paragons. Bunamar is now a holy place, its loss the last great blow against the Dwarven kingdoms, and its recapture would be a glorious signal to all of Orzammar. But capture it or no, all the warriors will die in the deep roads. It is a sobering thought, and I now know why the dwarves say the Legion's charge is the battlefield's most frightening sight. They have nothing left to lose. From the Stone Halls of Dwarves by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. Alright, House Idukun, Shield of Orzammar. The Assembly has never named a paragon with so little disagreement as there was for Paragon Idukun. No naysayers, only a single abstention. His worthiness was unquestionable, his favor with the ancestors clear. But family rumor says the man himself was deeply troubled, prone to fits of melancholy and self-doubt, never satisfied with his great achievement in protecting Orzammar. He died cursing that he had not managed to save the outlying Tigers. Before he rose to Paragon, he was of little note. The memories tell us he never entered a single proving, never sought to elevate his place among the warrior caste. He spent most of his years, prior to the first blight, fighting skirmishes in the deep roads, keeping them free from surface bandits, content to live quietly with his wife and daughters. When the blights began, it caught Orzammar in the midst of a vicious inter-house war. Most of the warrior caste was caught up in the feuding, for as word of attacks poured in, each great house demanded that the army be sent to defend their Tig, and no house would agree to sacrifice their own holdings for the safety of any others. The Assembly was so utterly tied up with the infighting that the Darkspawn spread unchecked to the gates of Orzammar herself. In the chaos, Aeducan grudgingly took command of the armies. He enlisted the aid of the mining caste to collapse every overrun passage, called upon the smith caste to supply them with arms, and bypassed the assembly and the nobles entirely. With his leadership, Orzammar was saved from annihilation. For his insubordination, he was made paragon. Yet he always considered it by default. From A History of Aeducan, Paragon, King, Peacemaker, by scholar Gertek. So the Paragons. As I studied among the dwarves, I became aware that their social system was as rigid as the stone that surrounded them. From their lowest servant to the king of Orzammar, each dwarf had a caste or rigid standing which dictates that what he may do and how he may do it. What fascinated me then was that the dwarves, stubborn proud as they may be, have built in a way for even the lowliest dwarf to bypass the caste system and reach prominence. Any dwarf who has made an achievement of significance can be named paragon, elevating that dwarf above all others. To become a paragon is to be recognized essentially as a living ancestor. Your words are considered ineffable, and the dwarves liken you unto a god. Your family, those you choose to ascend with you, become the founders of a new line of nobility. Indeed, every existing noble house among the dwarves traces its line back to a founding paragon. It is a rare thing, however. In my visit, I learned that only one paragon had been elected in generations, the smith Branca, exalted for her discovery of smokeless coal. I met the paragon Branca only once during my stay, and I considered it an odd occasion indeed. Surrounded by those of her house, this ill-tempered woman was draped in the finest clothing and jewelry, and was obviously revered even above the highest nobles, perhaps even the king. Yet she seemed to enjoy none of it. The burden of being a living legend is great, it appears. Statues of paragons are found throughout Orzammar, though nowhere so prominently than in the Hall of Heroes, through which one passes on entering from the surface. It is a breathtaking sight to behold, great works of stone, all seeming to hold up the ceiling above. It is meant to impress upon visitors to Orzammar, all who have gone before, I think. It is also meant to remind dwarves going to the surface, and thus abandoning their brethren forever, of all they are leaving behind. From the Stone Halls of the Dwarves, by Brother Genetivi. Alright, Orzammar politics. As dangerous as it is to mistake a dwarf's caste, it is far more deadly to mistake his alliances amongst the noble house of Orzammar. For everyone in the city is allied with someone, whether by blood or by word. The nobles do not engage directly in commerce themselves, as that is the domain of the merchant caste, but they do serve as patrons. They invest in shops or in artisans' work, and in turn reap a share of the profits as well as a measure of the credit. Merchants and warriors alike benefit from the services of a prestigious patron. The relative power of each house is ever-changing. It is usually safe to assume that whichever noble house holds the throne is at the top of the heap, but below that things grow into a tangled mess. Houses ally with one another by marriage. They earn rank and prestige when combatants loyal to them, or from their own bloodlines win provings. They earn it when artisans they patronize become sought after or well regarded, or when the merchants they invest in become successful. The degrees of power that these achievements confer is so murky, even to the dwarves, that it is unusual for nobles to challenge each other to provings, or that it isn't unusual for nobles to challenge each other to provings over whose smith forges better belt buckles, or whose servants have the best manners. Nor is it out of the ordinary to find two merchants arguing over whose noble patron has won the most acclaim, for the rank of the patron is the rank of the client. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the assembly, where the Deshers, representatives of each noble house, meet. Although the king technically rules Orzammar, kings are elected by the assembly, and so each king must work constantly to maintain support of the Deshers. Kings who prove unpopular find their heirs deemed unacceptable to inherit the throne. Power then passes to another house. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, Brother Genetivi. Okay. Dwarven faith. The chant of light is almost never heard in the halls of Orzammar. This is hardly surprising, for unlike elves, who were literally abandoned by their gods, or the Teventers, who worshipped dragons, the dwarves had no gods at all. Even the concept of worship is foreign in Orzammar. Instead, the dwarves seem to venerate the stone, a name they give to the earth itself. This seems practical for people living underground, if perhaps a bit unimaginative. For guidance in spiritual matters, they turn to their ancestors. These ancestors, who are said to have returned to the stone, communicate their wishes to the living via brutal trials by combat called provings. The ancestors' collective wisdom is maintained by the Shaper, which can apparently store records in Lyrium itself. Set above the ancestors, above even kings, are the paragons, dwarves who have achieved such greatness that they are elevated almost to godhood. These are the great figures holding up the hallways that leads from the surface the first glimpse of Orzammar that the outsiders see. In pursuit of knowledge, travels of a Transi scholar. Alright. Stellata Nagat, which I believe we've seen most of this, but I'll go ahead and I'll read it again. 913 Dragon. The Blight is building, though it is years from being named by the surface, but the memories know the signs. The Legion has lost Bunamar, though in truth it was lost to the living long ago. The spawn are moving freely, have numbers even the memories haven't seen. They will surge, release, we will fortify and follow. That is the way, and will always be so, until we fall and the surfacers wonder what has changed. From Chapter 49 of Stellata Nagat, the Stone Upheld, a commentary on the Roll of Years by Shaper Erden. 7-0. Store. The wars continue in the depths, and the border tides are lost. Orzammar fortifies and holds, but the lost ground is not regained, and remains dead space where the darkspawn multiply. It was a surge, but the surface was not breached. There was no great archdemon behind them. No blight was declared. No rallying cry was given. The wardens slumbered. After centuries of constant skirmishes, a trend becomes clear. The first line of defense, unacknowledged for centuries, weakens. Chapter 40 of Stellata Nagat. 310 Towers. They name it a blight, the third by their reckoning. It was just the fight to our ancestors, continued even though it shifts setting. The hordes that press their border surge, release, spilling across the surface. They fortify and follow. It was not their way to let the enemy rest. 325 Towers. The surface kingdoms declare victory. The horde is crushed, the push halted, and celebrations begin as humans thank the skies and their maker. Beneath their gaze and their feet, the darkspawn retreat to the steps of our tigers. New front lines are drawn across old. They settle in to breed, the memories say, as happened twice before, and likely in that darkness before that. From chapters 14 and 17 of Stellata Nagat. So, kind of a history of what's going on underground while the blights are happening. Alright, so this next one is Orzammar History, Chapter 2. I wasn't able to find Chapter 1, so I'm pulling it from the wiki, and I will read it from there. So, Orzammar History, Chapter 1. The memories tell us that our kingdom once reached far beneath the mountains, and that the Taigs were almost beyond counting. Kal Shirak was the capital then, home to all the noble houses, and Orzammar was simply the home to the miner and smith castes. It was with the Tevinter Imperium that things changed. Paragon Garl moved the seat of power to Orzammar to more closely oversee the trade that began with the surface. It seemed that our people were entering a new age of prosperity. The memories hold no explanations for the coming of the Darkspawn, only questions. At first they were rumors, noises in the deep roads, a lost traveler here and there. The warrior caste sent men to patrol the road and thought the matter settled. We did not know that while we searched for them, they were engaged in a search of their own. Sleeping deep in the stone itself was the archdemon. They found him and awakened him, and the blight began. The darkspawn poured out of the deep roads like smoke then, and the warrior caste struggled to hold them back. Countless Taigs lost in that first blight. But, as ever, in the worst moments of our need, a paragon arose. Paragon Idukan led the defenses of Orzammar, and the dark horde was beaten back. The cost of victory, however, was great. Much of the deep roads were sealed to hold back the darkspawn, cutting off Taigs, and even whole cities forever. Orzammar as a kingdom, as told by Shaper Seasbor. Orzammar History, Chapter 2. We were losing the war against the Darkspawn, slowly, a few men at a time, but losing all the same. The warrior caste was dwindling with each generation, as more able-bodied men perished in their prime without fathering sons. With each generation, more the deep roads had to be sealed, more taigs lost forever. The kings of Orzammar watched, and wondered how long it would be until nothing remained of our people but the memories. And then the Paragon Caridin arose from the smith caste with a new weapon, golems, giant soldiers of living stone and metal. Each one was an army. With the Paragon's golems, we began to retake the land we had lost. For a while there was no hope that victory, final victory, was coming. But at the height of the war, Paragon Caridin disappeared, and with him the means to make golems. Several forays were made into the deep roads to search for the Paragon, but nothing was ever found. Over time, the golems we had were damaged beyond repair, and we began our slide once again toward extinction. Orzammar as a Kingdom by Shaper Sizbor. And the next entry is on Ostagar, which is not here. Alright, but that covers the Dwarven culture. I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in, and in the meantime, in between time, take care, have fun, happy trails.